Good day, BMR Syndicate Research members. Welcome to our first videocast for the Economic and Business Research Division. My name is Professor Paul Kibuuka, and I'm the Director, Economic and Business Research. Our topics for this presentation will entail trends in global risks and major drivers, international, national, and subnational framework for assessing vulnerability, the provincial status of business vulnerability by period, number, and size for South Africa from 2008 to 2022, the provincial status of business vulnerability by sector for South Africa over the same period, and we'll end up with a conclusion. Turning to trends in global risks, impact, likelihood, and drivers, the sources and publications are shared on the slide. Since the 2008 global economic meltdown, the biggest risks have been economic. The World Economic Forum 2021-2022 Perception Survey identified climate action failure, extreme weather, and biodiversity loss as the top three most severe risks on a global scale, followed by societal, economic, and geopolitical risks over the next 10 years. Looking at international, national, and subnational framework for assessing vulnerability, business vulnerability refers to the state of weakness that allows threats to compromise the value of business. Vulnerability can be divided into 4 different categories: physical, operational, personal, and technical, and it manifests through reduced revenue or sales to existing and new customers, increased cost of sales, mainly through lack of working synergy with suppliers, raised expenses or costs through widespread employee lack of effort and focus, but also decreased cash flows by lack of working relationship with organizational stakeholders. Business vulnerability results in service disruption, losses, closure, and unemployment. In short, a threat may exist, but if there are no vulnerabilities for the threat to exploit, then there will be no risk. The factors identified by the BMR during 2021 continue impacting business vulnerability during 2022, exacerbated by additives such as the climate change-induced floods in KwaZulu-Natal during April 2022, but also the direct and indirect impacts of the Russia-Ukrainian war that started in February this year. Turning to the provincial status of business vulnerability by period, number, and size for South Africa from 2008 to 2022. As indicated in the graph, there are 3 distinct phases of business vulnerability identifiable in the different provinces over the last 15 years, namely period 1, 2008 to 2010, characterizing the global economic crisis; period 2, 2016 to 2019, the El Nino drought, low commodity prices, and the slow economic growth exacerbated by the loss of sovereign investment grade credit rating; as well as period 3, 2020 to 2022, the impact of the global COVID-19 pandemic and the Ukraine-Russian war. The Western Cape registered the highest level of business vulnerability during period 1, while Gauteng led in periods 2 and 3. Turning to the provincial business vulnerability, measured by the compounded annual growth rates in the number of businesses from 2008 to 2022, overall, during that period, the Western Cape province registered the highest decline in the number of businesses, followed by the Eastern Cape. Very low growths were also recorded in the Free State and Gauteng. The highest level of vulnerability in terms of business size was manifested in the small business category, superseded by the Western Cape, followed by the Eastern Cape, Gauteng, and the Free State, respectively. Looking at the provincial status of business vulnerability by sector, South Africa, 2008-2022. In the agriculture, forestry, and fishing sector, businesses exhibited low vulnerability, with all provinces recording positive compounded annual growth rates during the 15-year period, accelerating mainly post-2018. Considering the mining and quarrying sector, businesses likewise exhibited low vulnerability, with all provinces recording positive compounded annual growth rates during the period 2000-2022, but with heightened declines and vulnerability during the global economic meltdown and the low commodity prices slump in the Northwest, Limpopo, and Mpumalanga, respectively. Turning to the manufacturing sector, businesses also manifested low vulnerability, with all provinces recording positive compounded annual growth rates, but with vivid declines in business numbers in 2009, 2012, and 2019 in Gauteng, KZN, and the Western Cape. The electricity, gas, and water sector, businesses also showed similar vulnerability trends to manufacturing, accentuating over 2009, 2012, and 2019, except that the provinces with the lowest compounded annual growth rates in this sector were Western Cape, Mpumalanga, and KZN, respectively. The construction sector presents an almost flat trend in business numbers over the study period post the 2010 World Cup, witnessing an outstanding increase in vulnerability over the period 2017 to 2019, followed by a transient recovery and then a resumption up to 2022, led by Western Cape, Northwest, and Eastern Cape provinces. The wholesale and retail trade, catering and accommodation sector ushered a steadily declining trend in business numbers over the research period, confirming the impact of unemployment and declining household consumption expenditure since 2008 on business vulnerability in this sector, experienced in all provinces, spearheaded by Northern Cape, Northwest, and the Eastern Cape provinces. The transport, storage, and communication sector traces the trend in high business vulnerability set by the wholesale and retail sector since 2008 amongst all provinces, rather accentuated by KZN, Northern Cape, and Eastern Cape provinces in this sector. The financial intermediation, insurance, and real estate, as well as business services sector, also repeats the declining trend in business numbers over the study period, this time led by KZN, Gauteng, and Eastern Cape provinces. Business in the community, social, and personal services sector registered vulnerability during the period 2008 to 2010, following which there was a recovery up to 2013, followed by vulnerability in almost all provinces, notably Mpumalanga, Free State, and the Eastern Cape. In conclusion, syndicate members, business vulnerability has been a function of the three trends and periods of the global economic crisis: low economic growth due to El Nino and low commodity prices, the downgrading of the South African credit rating, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the war between Ukraine and Russia. All provinces have been impacted by business vulnerability, the top three most affected being Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and Free State. In terms of business size, small businesses have been the most impacted, with vulnerability mainly experienced in the Western and Eastern Cape, Free State, and Gauteng. Considering sectors, the greatest vulnerability was in the wholesale and retail trade, catering and accommodation, followed by transport and storage and financial intermediation. The most recurrent causes pointed out for business vulnerability during 2021-2022 were civil unrest, followed by electricity supply disruptions and subdued domestic demand. I thank you for your attention.